All right, Richard Worsham, you were on Driven to Ride again. Thank you for being here, sir.
Well, it's fantastic to be back. Good to see you again, Mark. We got to hang out quite a bit over the last couple. Well, it's been a little bit, but we got to hang out and ride together, eat together. So it's good. Good to see you.
Yeah. It was good to spend some time in the crazy area known as Sturgis Bike Rally, and it was a heck of a time. It was both our first times too. It was your first time, right?
Absolutely, it was my first time in that neck of the woods entirely. I hadn't been to either of the Dakotas or what we drove through on the way out there. I don't even know. It's not my neck of the woods. So going on that 90 up through that part of the country, I'd never been there. To the Badlands, I'd never been driven through, and certainly had not been to Sturgis, South Dakota.
Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful drive up there. But before we kind of dive into that, tell me where you were driving from, and also like what your kind of claim to fame is. What maybe people know you for.
Oh yeah, I'm with Janus Motorcycles. I'm co-founder here at Janus Motorcycles and designer. Janus is located in Goshen, Indiana, so that's the northeastern corner of the state of Indiana. We're basically on the Michigan border. We're about 15 miles south, right off of 80-90, and over on toward the Ohio side. So yeah, we build small displacement, handmade, lightweight bikes. We're a very specialized kind of motorcycling that focuses on the sensation of riding pared down to the most essential, most visceral experience. So minimal instrumentation. Many of our bikes are carbureted, basically paring them down to what we think is really why we ride motorcycles. Probably if you see one, you'll what will strike you is just how small and minimal they are compared to most of the big V-twins that you're going to see at places like Sturgis. So we definitely stuck out in South Dakota. As far as the drive out there, it's about an 18-hour drive through some really pretty country. So my original plan was to go out for the second half of the week, but the day before we left, we changed plans, and it made more sense just for personnel and who needed to be back at the shop more for me to go. So I went for the entire time, and we drove out with 11 bikes. So that would be a van, 2 vans, and a big trailer loaded down. I drove out with our delivery driver and part-time assembly hand, Kyle, and kind of poetic to talk more. We'll get into it more, but we decided to listen to. I had never read Neil Gaiman's American Gods, which is all about that part of the country. So we listened to American Gods on the way out and back, and the timing was absolutely perfect. So it was a really cool experience because we're like karting motorcycles across through Wisconsin, Illinois, South Dakota. It was really cool. So we got the real experience.
Americana. No, that's awesome. It's almost like you kind of had your own like Great American Road Trip a little bit. It sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And in South Dakota, we have a dear customer and friend in Murdo, which is about 2 hours east of Sturgis. So we decided to spend the night with him, and he owns a motel, and he's all into like vintage trucks, cars. And Murdo has the Pioneer Museum is in Murdo of vintage cars, classic cars. And so, I get there, we see Tim. He's ridden his Janus to Alaska, to Dead Horse and back.
Wow.
Yeah. We see Tim, and then he says, I think you'll like your room. So I get in there, and on the wall of the room, it's like giant framed pictures of Janus motorcycles.
That's awesome.
So it was really, really cool. Really cool indeed. So, it was a really great experience getting to Sturgis. I think is a really part of the experience. Is you're not only going away to this event, but you're getting away from where you are in the country. And South Dakota is, for most of us in the United States, it's pretty remote.
Yeah, it's a little out of the way. I mean, no matter, the cool thing is it's like in the center of the country, but It
Yeah.
is kind of like out of the way. You have to really, and there's no major airport. The closest thing I think I heard from people was they flew into Denver and then took an 8-hour ride from Denver up to South
You
Dakota.
can get
So you
into
really have to
Cedar Rapids,
Oh,
but
okay.
that's still not in Sturgis.
Yeah, you have to really like try to get there. Like you have to put forth the effort. It's not necessarily just down the road.
No, not at all.
So what drew you to Sturgis? I mean, in the first place, obviously you wanted to go there and show off, the Janus bikes and stuff. But what kind of started that idea in your head in the first place?
Well, it was actually a connection in the industry. Robert Pandya, who because he's been on your podcast.
Yes, sir.
Robert was at the time he was involved with Buffalo Chip, which is a big boy. I mean, putting a name on what it actually is it's a campground and event venue. Let's just say concert venue.
Putting it mildly, but yeah.
Putting it mildly, yes. Outside, yeah, understated. Outside of the city of Sturgis, and they are a big part of the Sturgis experience. So Robert encouraged us to look at going there. I've known Robert for years now, not as closely as we've worked with him through working with Buffalo Chip, but it was his recommendation that got us there. And then we were able to work with his colleague, Jeff D'Entremont at the Buffalo Chip. And it was a big thing for us to sign up and, to come on as a sponsor of the event. And then just getting there and having all of our people there and putting it on, it was a big investment to be able to be there, but a worthy one. We were excited to be there and continue to be so.
Yeah. What was, because you said this was your first ever Sturgis rally. What was kind of your first impression when you got there, kind of got everything set up? Obviously, you're trying to get the bikes all lined up and everything, but when you could kind of step back and kind of take a look at where you were, I mean, what were some of your impressions?
Well, the problem with not going as a participant, going as a vendor is always, sure. And I've had this happen, in Mid-Ohio, at Barber, at every event is, you're so focused on what you're doing that you sometimes miss the bigger picture a little bit initially.
Sure.
Of course, the beauty of Sturgis is it goes on for 10 days. So if you didn't get it the first day, you got plenty of other chances. But I'll just say, like, getting in there, we take this exit off the highway and it's beautiful country. And then, like, literally, half a mile, it turns to a gravel road.
Right.
And it's kind of like hard packed clay. And then we drive for, 5 miles on dirt with all these motorcycles going the other direction. And this is before technically it started. This is the Thursday before it started. Mm-hmm. And, going over this hill, and you come over this hill and then you see the campground, not Sturgis, but the Buffalo Chip campground, which is, they've actually tried to make it a city over the last couple of years.
Yeah. It is like a small town. City. Yeah.
I'm sure you're talking to Rod and Damon, but it's pretty wild looking. It looks like a encampment out of Mad Max. And that impression only gets more cemented in your mind as you experience it more. So anyway, we got there, and yeah, I mean, the experience is like, or the impression we had was, honestly, I mean, it didn't surprise me a lot. I mean, I was kind of like, wow, well, we're really here. This is it. There's a lot of Harley Davidsons, a lot of big V twins, a lot of noise. But yeah, it took us a couple of days to really experience more of it as we kind of, because we were working, doing demo rides and meeting people. So yeah.
You were working all day, kind of tethered to the booth a little bit. I know you had to go, run errands and stuff even a little bit here and there. So
yeah, I said Rapid. What did I say? Cedar Rapids. I mean Rapid City.
You can fly into Rapid nearby. City.
Rapid City, but yeah, Rapid City is about, I don't know, half an hour to 40 minutes depending on where you're going. And I made it drive so many times trying to, picking up different flyers or posters. We were adapting our strategy along the way. What we ended up doing finally was making posters out of like lawn sign material, that corrugated plastic.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
zip tying them really kind of it worked out. I mean, you can speak to it, you saw it, but I thought it was relatively elegant. Little posters on each side of some of our bikes that said, Janus Motorcycles, demos, test rides at the Crossroads, at the Buffalo Chip, and then we could take them wherever we were going. Folks would know what the bike was, because every time you're riding a Janus, people are looking at it and like, what in the world is that? I've never seen one of those. And so, but anyway, yeah, it's we were figuring a lot out this year. I think that's a really good way to put what we were there. It was more of we made a bunch of sales, but I would describe it as more of a kind of an exploratory learning experience. And I really hope next year's a big year, as you know.
Sure is.
For both Sturgis and the Buffalo Chip anniversary years. I think it's 85th for Sturgis and what is it, 45th for Buffalo Chip?
I think that's right. Yeah, that sounds right.
So it's a big year, and I think there'll be a lot more people there. But yeah, we're planning on going back. Of course, we are engaged for a 2-year sponsorship vendor agreement with Buffalo Chip, and but yeah, this was more of a learning opportunity. That was we learned a lot. So yeah.
What are some of the responses you got from the motorcycles? I mean, you guys took them everywhere around there, and you got a lot of looks. I know that much.
Yeah, you saw it. Honestly, the response that we got was more positive than I expected, and more positive than I've experienced at other events.
Really?
You think Sturgis, you think Harley Davidson, although now you need to think Indian as well, because there are a lot of those there. But you think a big American V-twin, and it makes sense. You start riding those roads out there. They're these big. I would just, apart from Iron Mountain Road and up by Mount Rushmore, I would not describe any of the riding I did as technical. It's big, sweeping turns. I mean, some of it gets a little tighter, but you ride anywhere outside of LA, and you're going to get some technical riding. Right. And this is more, which is less. It's more suited, like Malibu area, for example, is more suited for a sport bike. Or Janus, whatever, but less for a Harley Davidson, let's say. And out there in South Dakota, man, that's suited for a big touring bike where you can just, do 75 miles an hour and, go straight and get some curves. But yeah, to answer your question, I don't think we got any of the. Sometimes, with Janus, our bikes are so different. People just do not know what to expect. While they're very similar to what motorcycles used to be, they're very different than what's available now and what's been available for the last 30 years, which is big, heavy, and let's say, I won't say very powerful. Let's say a lot of power in the bike. Sure. Our bikes are kind of the opposite of all those categories. They're lower powered, I would say appropriately powered, but they're very lightweight, and they are not loud. They can be, but most of our bikes stock are not loud. And I don't think people are buying them to be loud. But because of how different they are, we often get people just like, oh, why would, how much you want, $8,000 for that or whatever, or $12,000 for that. And it's difficult for them to understand where I don't think everyone there understood it. And even if it wasn't, like, I would get some comments like, that's awesome, whatever, you get the typical, I love that. And the most negative comment I heard was, that is really cool. Not exactly my style, but that is really neat what you're doing. Nice. That's probably the most negative comment. And if that's the most negative comment you get, everybody has their own tastes. And one of the things that leads, I think, to our success is the fact that we don't appeal to everybody. It's like we're special. We are so adamant about what we're doing that, it fits some people and it doesn't others. But I don't think we'd fit the people we do if we didn't come down somewhere and say, no, this is what we're doing. Yeah. And it's different than basically everybody else.
Well, I think, kind of thinking about it that way is what better place to go and show off what you guys are making and what you're doing at Janus than go to a place where everybody loves motorcycles. I mean, I think that was, it didn't surprise me, but it was cool to see. Like, that was kind of the big through line, obviously, is like everybody loves motorcycles, but not just Harleys. Obviously Indian is a big part of it too. But I mean, I was on a Yamaha. I saw, a couple people on all different adventure bikes and everything. And just everybody loved motorcycles no matter what they were.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense that you guys were there. So going back to Iron Mountain, Mount Rushmore, maybe the Spearfish Canyon. I mean, what did you think of the riding out there? I mean, especially maybe on a Janus, like, what was your experience with the rides out there?
Oh, they were amazing. I didn't get enough in, to be honest. I mean, we were working so much that I did not get to ride enough. We got to ride Spearfish Canyon with you, Mark, and that was awesome. I mean, that was just incredible. The views, you're going through this twisty canyon. We got to see mountain goats on the side of the road. Got some good pictures there with the team and you. And then great, get to ride out to dinner. Incredible. You're from Illinois. I'm from Indiana. We don't have that riding. I love Indiana. I love the Midwest, but it's primarily the people that I like and the communities that are out here. The riding. Well, I mean, I won't beat about the bush. It's flat and it's straight. It's the continental
not a lot
grid.
of elevation. Yep.
And there's not even any elevation change. So you can get better riding up in northern Michigan, which I like to do a lot of riding up there. But I'm from Southwest Virginia, which is the Blue Ridge Mountains, and a lot of twisty. I grew up on a gravel road, sometimes I really do miss that. So being able to experience the riding out there was incredible. The speeds were appropriate for a 250.
Sure.
You could do. We did. What was the name of that one canyon? Going down toward Nemo.
I'm not sure.
It's basically if you go south out of Sturgis.
Keystone. Oh, okay.
Van Acker Canyon.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Down to Nemo. The speed limit's like 55, and I was on you ride a 250. You're behind a Harley, and you're still not able to go as fast as the bike can. And that, I mean, obviously during the rally, the police are more enforcing the speed limits. I think it's probably not as big a deal one day after the rally, but perfectly adequate for that kind of riding. I did go out on the Legends ride with the Buffalo Chip folks, and I made the mistake of taking a 250 instead of a 450 and kind of got left in the dust. And that's one of those places where it's big old open road and those Harleys just 80 miles an hour, and the little 250 is not really happy at that speed. So I made it to all the destinations. I was just behind everybody.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. So like you said, we did a couple of rides, and I was on a 900 and was tagging along with the 450s and the 250s. It was kind of one of these things is not like the other, but I appreciated the fact that like it slowed me down a little bit to be able to take everything in, because the landscape is beautiful. Like you said, we came across some wildlife. I mean, there's just so much beauty to take in there, which I think you do appreciate more a little bit, going a little bit more slow than maybe you would normally, Yeah,
there's different kinds of riding. I've done long distance riding where you have a time goal, like a iron butt saddle sore. And there's a lot of fun to doing a ride like that. But you do miss a lot because your objective is not to see things. You see things. It's great. It's part of it. But the primary objective is to be in a certain place by a certain time.
Yeah,
and that's
you got to
fun.
go.
And that's a lot of people, that's a lot of our travel we do today is, I need to get to Chicago to catch a flight, or I need to go to Sturgis, South Dakota to set up a booth. Right.
Yeah.
And that you're just getting on the highway and going. And my contention is that, there are sometimes people want to ride a motorcycle and do that. But the reason most of us ride is not to do that. It's to enjoy the smells. And exactly like you're saying, to see the wildlife, to really become part of the scenery that you're passing through. And so that's why I like those 250s. I think it's what you're talking about. I mean, they're great for just putting along, and that's the highway experience that we think of, and the romantic idea of traveling. Doesn't get much better. I mean, walking is really good too. I'm a huge fan of walking, but people. That's why we've talked about this before on your podcast. But the term rambling, actually, what's what we call it. What our bikes do, they ramble. But I stole that word not from Led Zeppelin or from the rock and roll lexicon, but instead from, in England, they call these people that walk, it's called rambling. And it's like this ability to get out and experience the countryside, and not just experience the countryside, but maintain the paths that you ramble on. So you ramble to preserve your ability to continue to ramble.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like
it. It's an end in itself.
Yeah, I didn't know that's where it came from, so that's pretty cool. I mean, I feel like that's, again, taking it slow, and really just the slower you go, the more you can appreciate kind of what's around you. Because I did go back around and do a faster loop the next day, kind of on my own, and I was able to take some corners and stuff, which was a blast. It was a blast, but it was definitely like looking straight ahead rather than kind of being able to slow down and look around a little bit. So I appreciated the rides that we did. But going back to the people and at the Buffalo Chip and just kind of at Sturgis in general, was there anything maybe that surprised you about like the people there? Maybe some stereotypes that you had initially that were kind of myth busted during the rally at all?
I mean, in a lot of ways, it really lived up to my expectation, and I mean that in a positive sense. In the sense
for
that,
sure.
like, boy, this is kind of wild. Well, how about the? I mean, yeah, I'll expound on that. You sometimes hear about Sturgis that it is no longer what it used to be, and it's probably true. It's not as crazy and as sort of outlawish as it was in the 70s, let's say. And you hear that it's a bunch of, I mean, I've heard that, it's a bunch of lawyers and they dress up in cosplay and put on their bandanas and everything. And maybe, I'm sure that there's a lot of money there. I'm sure there is. And people dressing up. But part of motorcycling is dressing up. Let's be honest.
Sure.
But for the most part, I think maybe if there was a stereotype that was broken, it wasn't that they weren't a lot of big V-twin riders with black leather and tattoos and long hair and big beards, but instead that more of those folks seemed like they really were the real deal. There were. It wasn't this kind of like as much of this kind of cosplay or wealthy people dressing up and pretending to be real bikers, at least in my experience, as I thought it would be. And so in that sense, it was more real and more. But it was very much that Americana experience of a big loud bike and enjoying the freedom of these 2 weeks to go out and have fun, and in many cases, ride in the morning and drink in the night, listen to music.
Yeah. I mean, I think the best way, you could say is it is authentic. It is kind of what it says on the box. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's real. It's real. It was a real experience. And driving through Sturgis at night, the town of Sturgis, that is, it's just wild. It's wild. It's really cool. It's just bikes back to back going through stop signs and stoplights. And then of course, when the main street is blocked off and it's just bikes parked, thousands of motorcycles parked side by side up the whole street, and all these booths open and stores open and tattoos being done and fried chicken being made and beer being drunk. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's the real deal for sure. And it kind of reminds me of something you said. So one of the events at the Buffalo Chip was bare knuckle boxing, which was pretty wild in and of itself. And we were hanging out, and we were just kind of all taking it in, literally watching people fight, sanctioned fighting, people cheering and drinking and having a good time. Do you remember what you said to me just casually that kind of like encapsulated it perfectly? At least in my take.
Yeah. something to the effect of what we're experiencing right now is not new. There are constants in human nature that never change, and what we're experiencing is something that's been going on for millennia. People gathering together and watching people fight and drinking, and it's like a fair, and those go back. Think of whether it's Ireland or Russia or the Far East. This is a human activity, and that evening when I said that, I was really feeling it. Like, this is just humanity doing its thing, and it's really actually as bloody and messy and wild as it is. It's kind of beautiful, really. It's really neat. So yeah, I was able to really appreciate the time we had out there. Exhausted though I was. It was a lot of work and very tiring, but it was fun. Someday I'd like to go back and just experience it as a participant rather than working it. But
yeah. Actually, that was going to be kind of my next and my last question was, if you're going back next year to be a vendor and a sponsor, and which is super cool. But would you go back kind of as a participant, and what's kind of the draw that would that maybe is calling you back there?
I think it's just the experience. I was talking about how we were listening to American Gods on the way out there, and he makes this point in that book that the American like places of power aren't Stonehenge. Stonehenge is in England. It's not here. It's like roadside attractions, like the mystery spot, or what's the house on the one I can't remember the one he mentions, but it's these weird things like Giant Boot, or and Sturgis is like that. It's like it's this town in the middle of nowhere that has somehow collected this event that happens, and it's built up this. It's a roadside attraction, and people gather, and they're there for a reason, and it's. I think it's greater than just carrying on. They're there because it's an experience of something meaningful. So yeah, it would be fun to go back. I think I was joking with my wife. I was like, we got to go back and like, just maybe we won't stay for the whole time, but like a couple of days would be really fun, and just experience it and enjoy it and have some fun. So ride out and ride back.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Richard, thank you so much for spending some time with us, and thanks for introducing me to the Janus team and letting me tag along with you guys. It was a lot of fun. It definitely made the trip that much more fun. So thank you.
Absolutely. It was likewise. We had a blast hanging out with you, and I look forward potentially to seeing you at our owners rally next month. Is that right? You're gonna be able to make it?
There.
All right.
Be there.
Sounds good.
So all right, thanks, Richard. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.